All right, welcome to Friday Night Live. We are sponsored by Craig Faile of Blackbridge Financial. For all your financial needs, make sure you check out Blackbridge Financial through Craig Faile. They offer some great options to manage your money. So, obviously, tonight we're on a short kind of slate because of a lot of different um, things that happened with Hurricane Helene, and it's led to this extra week of football that not a lot of teams kind of decided to play. We've got some private school playoff games. Shaquan was at Charlotte Christian and Providence Day, and he'll have some highlights and pictures from that game coming up this weekend. Last night we went to a game that didn't count in the extra week, which was Mountain Island at Valentine Ridge. Mountain Island did win the game, 42-14. We did have some pictures. We had a few highlights, and then we had some interviews that we put out on social media. Um, Even though the game didn't count, Mountain Island kind of used it to get ready for their 1A playoff run. They've started their backup quarterback, Javon Boyd, who had a really good game, threw 5 touchdown passes in the game. Um, the two guys that really stood out as receivers in that game, Queen City Senior Bowl selection, Justice Washington, and a freshman named Andre Ramseur, who goes by the nickname 3K. Both of those guys have electric speed, excellent ball skills with the football in the air, and they really took advantage of a young Valentine Ridge team overall. Talking with Valentine Ridge coach Chris Redding, he said they started 16 freshmen this year, which I mean that's a lot for JV, much less on a varsity level. Um, but they made some strides. And they really kind of made the most of the small victories. Scoring 14 points is a big deal for that program. And they're in a unique situation where, no other school in the state can say they had the potential to bring every player back um, to that team next season. They had no seniors. They had a very limited number of juniors. The vast majority of that team were sophomore and freshmen. So, it'll be exciting to see the progress within that Valentine Ridge program going forward. That being said, I've got the Max Preps ticker up here. So Thursday night there were a couple other, well, not listed, but anyway, but there were a couple other games that took place that didn't count. But one that did count on Thursday night was Crest defeating Stuart Kramer 50-7. Um, that game doesn't have a lot of consequence on Crest because of where they are in the Big South Conference, but Crest is definitely going to be a playoff team in the 3A ranks. So that kind of solidifies, what their RPI ranking may look like for seeding purposes coming up on Sunday. But tonight, we did have some games that counted, and there were some games that were played that didn't count. If you were at any of those games, please feel free to share your comments and your thoughts about what you saw out there. I've seen a couple of scores, not too many. But I got the Max Reps ticker up here to reference just in case. But we've got 3 comments in the bucket, so let's see what we got here. Let's see here. Dudley is in the house. Dudley, did you guys play tonight? Did you take advantage of the extra week? Let me know because I'm not sure. There were a lot of matchups that were kind of, you know, interesting to say the least. We're seeing some teams that decided to go ahead and play versus some teams that did not play. So let me know if you guys played tonight. And then we have a discreet Facebook user that wants to shout out Jamal Root from Charlotte Christian. He was a game changer in the game versus Providence Day. Even though they lost, it was a good one to witness. Well, let's see if we've got a final score on that one because that is a playoff game in the NCISAA. And we do have a final score, which is Providence Day 1, 28-20 over Charlotte Christian. And as I said before, Shaquan will have pictures and highlights from that game. But, we talked about this before in the regular season where these teams, will match up in the regular season, which these guys did, obviously, because they're rivals on Sardis Road. And then Providence, they won that first game. And then coming back, playing the second time, just seeing kind of some of the updates. This game was pretty close throughout, but Providence Day, to my understanding, scored a late touchdown to get that 8-point margin, and then Charlotte Christian just wasn't able to get down the field and kind of have a chance to tie the game up and possibly force it to overtime. So that's a that's a good, very good game for Providence Day. I don't know the result of the other side of the NCISAA bracket right now, but chances are that they're going to have a rematch against Raven Gap, and that game would be down in Georgia since Raven Gap won the first game between Providence Day, and Raven Gap has the number 1 seed out of the NCISAA. So congrats to Coach Greer and that Providence Day program for finding a way to defeat a good Charlotte Christian team 2 times this season. That's very hard to do. It's hard to beat a good team twice. And that's something that we'll talk about once we get into the NCHSAA public school playoffs coming up next week. Because in the first round, we tend to see a lot of rematches that occur there. Also in some games, I'll share some scores that I've got here. In another game that was of interest to Cabarrus County, Cox Mill defeated Concord 44-20, and that gives Cox Mill their second win on the season after defeating Hickory Ridge. So Cox Mill going into the offseason on a high note, which is always good there. Concord, given their finish to the season, I don't think they're going to be in the 3A playoffs, which is unfortunate, but those guys, had a really good start to the season, and then things kind of fell off, toward the end there. But, I know they're going to be back and they're going to be strong. Coach Shepard and those guys, they have a lot of big offensive linemen in that program. There'll be some guys that come up through the ranks to fill the shoes of some very talented seniors in that program. Let's see, got more comments here. And Facebook user says, not sure why the comments are coming up announced, but it's J-Man. Hey, J-Man, what's up, man? Good to see you. I'm glad you said that, because I don't know why it's coming up Facebook user. And it looks like all the Facebook comments are coming up that way, so that's weird. Maybe there's some type of issue going on. I don't know. Another comment from Facebook user. This is going to be a fun show. Believe Raymond Gap definitely won by a huge margin. It's another rematch. Yeah, that's what I think too. And the big key in that first one was Raven Gap just was able to kind of take control in the second half with their running game. They have a lot of talented kids on that team that really make a big difference offensively for them, and they were able to get some big plays, and then it just kind of snowballed from there, and it just got to a point where Providence they couldn't make up the margin. So everyone commenting on Facebook, please kind of say your name because I don't know why it's just saying Facebook user tonight. StreamYard might be having an issue. That's what we use to get the show out there. So yeah, if you don't mind, if you're gonna comment, just put your name out there, because I want to shout you out. I appreciate you watching, but there's some kind of issue going on. All right, JR and Maeve watching on YouTube says Watauga beats South Caldwell 63-19 in Watauga's third game in a week. Yeah. Now that has to be something that has to be talked about, because we haven't really talked about how the mountain teams are making up games in such a short period of time, but I think that's a factor. I really do think it's a factor going into the playoffs, because they had to. The extra week was really, to help them, makeup games, and they were playing games in a span of kind of 3 day rest in between, and then playing another game, and that's a lot. That's a lot to get in a 1 week's period. So it'll be interesting to see if that has an effect on their first round game because of the turnaround time there. Now the good thing is they'll have a week to kind of reset themselves, but still, that's kind of tough. That's kind of tough to deal with, and maybe the adrenaline will carry them through, and they'll be okay. But first round's all about matchups, man. It's all about matchups. But Watauga's a really fundamentally sound, well-coached team. And I'm sure they'll be ready, but they'll be a high seed. But if they get matched up with a low seed that has talent, such as, let's say, a Butler, that would be an interesting first round matchup for sure. All right. This is crazy. Facebook user says Kings Mountain won tonight. Let me see. I think they played North Gaston. I think I've seen if I got a final. Yep, I got a final. That was Kings Mountain winning 54-6 over North Gaston, and that will help enhance their playoff seeding a little bit. South Point defeated Hunter Huss 36-22. So South Point, and I say Belmont South Point, will get the number 1 seed out of the Big South 3A, which is the Gaston Cleveland County Conference there. That has a lot of Gaston County and Cleveland County schools in it. That game was close. I believe, did Hunter Huss lead that game at halftime? I think that's what Joe Hughes put out there. I think it might have been 22-20. And then South Point was able to shut Hunter Huss down in the second half and put up a couple touchdowns for that final margin. But once again, we talk about dangerous low seeds. Hunter Huss is a dangerous low seed in the 3A. And, the seed that they pushed a number 1 seed in South Point, where they're leading on the road at halftime, that's going to be another team that, high seeds in 3A don't want to see because they're athletic, they have talent, they have a dynamic quarterback in Javarian Brown that, can really get some things done right there. And to this user's point, I'm sorry the names are not coming up, guys. It's crazy. But Hunter Huss did lead South Point for most of that game. So that's going to be a dangerous team that nobody wants to see. So we got Karen Belt watching. We got Nikisha watching. Shout out to Rule came from J-Man, so I know those 3 are watching. Let's see here. Oh, Jason McCrory, there we go. All right, Providence beat South Meck 21-0. So what that means a lot. Not only for Providence, because that puts Providence, I believe, at 5-5. And we'll have to look at the RPI to see if they have a shot with that victory. But any team that beat Providence or played, right? Not beat Providence, but any team that played Providence, that is going to help their RPI because the biggest component of their RPI, like we talked about before, is the opponent's winning percentage. And now Providence getting to 500, that helps. So you're thinking about teams in the Southwestern 4A, first of all, and that includes Butler. And to answer your question, Karen, Butler has a shot at the playoffs, and Providence winning that game over South Meck only helps Butler get into the playoffs because that improves their opponent's winning percentage with that Providence victory. So the projections had Butler at a 29 seed is what I saw earlier today. So this should only help them. And it's crazy that you don't play a game, but your RPI could go up a little bit. And I think they're going to make the playoffs. And that's going to be a low seed in 4A West that nobody wants to see. That's for sure. Kim, good to see you. Good to see you. And for everyone watching, I saw Kim last night at the Valentine Ridge and Mountain Island game, and we had a nice talk with her and a couple other Berry parents and players that came out to watch that game. And one thing that we kind of talked about was recruiting, and I think we're gonna kind of do and it may be a special show. It may be embedded in one of these shows, but we're going to talk about recruiting in depth because it's getting close to a time where we're going to have an open recruiting period, along with our showcase, which is December 7th at Rocky River High School. You can sign up at charlottefootballinsiders.com. But we need to talk about recruiting because there's a lot of vultures out here that are trying to take advantage of both players and parents that don't know the ins and outs of recruiting. And what you don't know is what you don't know, and that's okay. But the big thing is with recruiting, there are people that are going to tell you that you can sign up for a recruiting service and they're going to help promote you and get you offers and get you a scholarship, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that stuff is stuff that you can do for yourself for free. So we're going to talk about that really soon because there are a lot of, teams and players that don't make the playoffs. And, for some of those juniors and seniors, it is time for them to start thinking about recruiting and how to get noticed and, how to get exposure and all those things. So that's something that we're going to be talking about here in the near future for sure. Shannon Armstrong watching. Thank you for watching, Shannon. Appreciate it. Jonathan Mitchell is here, waiting for those final RPIs. Yeah, so the RPIs should go final, and whether they promote them or not, there is a game on Saturday, or there are a couple of games on Saturday, and after those games are played, then they'll tabulate that final RPI. That final RPI will be used for seeding purposes on Sunday. Sunday, the earliest the matchups can come out for the playoffs is 1 p.m. Sometimes it'll take longer because they'll release a preliminary bracket at that posted time, and then schools will have about a 2-hour period before the bracket goes final. And in that 2-hour period, the schools can call the state, the NCHSAA, and report any issues that they may see in how they were seeded, whether it's a conference champion being seeded too low based on RPI ranking, or a certain team getting in before another team because there's a rule called the leapfrog rule, where if you're in a conference and let's say it's 2 teams in a conference and you have a team that has a higher RPI ranking than another team in the conference, but when they played head to head, the lower team defeated the higher team and they finished in a tie. And in that situation, the lower RPI team that won the game has to be seeded before the higher RPI team because they won head to head. It's called the leapfrog rule. But things like that, will get disputed during that time period if they feel like the state made a mistake. And then once that happens, the brackets go final. And we're going to do a bracket release show when they go final on Sunday, probably Sunday evening. We'll get the time exactly once the preliminary brackets go out, because once that happens, then we'll know when the brackets go final. So stay tuned to social media on Sunday. I'll put out a statement on when we're going to do the playoff bracket show, and then we'll do that Sunday evening at some point. And we'll talk about all the matchups, at least in 4A and 3A West. If there's enough interest, we'll go into 2A and 1A West as well. Facebook user Erwin beat AC Reynolds tonight. All right, y'all hold on one second. Bear with me because I gotta switch my camera here because I'm getting fuzzy. I don't know why. I'm getting fuzzy there. We're gonna switch that back. Okay, there we go. Now that is a big win for Erwin, because that's going to give Erwin a conference #1 seed in the playoffs. So that's a very significant win, and that's going to bump AC Reynolds down to a lower seeding for the playoffs. So that's awesome. That is a really good win for Asheville Irving over a good AC Reynolds team. Thank you for this. Fred T. Ford into the 43-game losing streak in overtime. Yeah, I got that score right here. 53-52 over West Iredale. Wow. Good gracious. Well, congrats to Fred T. Ford, man. If you're gonna break a streak, that's the way to do it right there, man. That's awesome. That's awesome stuff, man. Let's see here. Jason McCrory says Providence win should help RG Kill get in. Yeah. That's another team that's gonna benefit. Yeah, that's the first game of the season. Yeah, that's a good point right there. Man. Wow, that's all right there. What's up, big dog? Well, once again, I don't know what the issue is. I cannot see Facebook names tonight. So if you comment, put your name on it, and I'll shout you out. But it's good to see you, whoever that is. It's good to see you. So Karen also says both Indy and Butler will be seated in between 23 and 30. In the previous bracket, Independence was at 22. And Butler was at a 29. So not a big difference in seeding, even though the teams had significantly different types of seasons from a win-loss standpoint. But yeah, I mean, you're right on it. You're right on it. They're going to be, both low seeds. They're going to have to go on the road for, the majority of the playoffs. So they played a great game last week, and, they're kind of in the same playoff boat as a result right there. So RPI should be updated around 3 a.m. Well, here's the thing. There's still Saturday games to be played. So it's not totally official because, at least in the Charlotte region, there are 2 games that are going to be played between Mitchell and Avery County and Bandy's at East Burke in the Charlotte area. And I'm sure across the state, let's see if I can get the state selection here. Let's see here. Let me see if I can get this up. So tomorrow in the state, there's only 3 games, but those 3 games, will kind of help, delay the final RPI for the playoff seeding anyway. Because I know some of these teams are in different classifications, so the truly final RPI won't be done until tomorrow at some point, probably tomorrow evening, because those games are afternoon games for tomorrow. So, but I understand most of it will be done. It won't be a huge effect for most teams tomorrow. Let's see here. Panthers playing Germany. Well, yeah. And that'll help honestly for us because Sunday the Panthers game will be out of the way. That's all I really care about, to be honest. So we can focus on playoffs and RPI rankings. But yeah, so let's talk about some scores for tonight. We talked about Providence Day defeating Charlotte Christian 28-20 in the NCISAA playoffs. Cox Mill 44, Concord 20. Mountain Heritage overdrawn 49-6. We talked about Fred T. Ford with their victory in overtime over West Iredale, breaking that 43-game losing streak. Thank you for the user that shared that. Hickory Grove was in the playoffs in a rematch against Asheville School, and Asheville School knocked them out. Tough game, 51-9. Asheville School advances in the Division II bracket of the NCISAA playoffs. Talked about Providence defeating South Meck 21-0 and the effects of that. Alexander Central defeated Ashe County 27-18. We talked about Watauga defeating South Caldwell 63-19. Freedom over High Brighton 26-21. Kings Mountain over North Gaston 54-6. Bessemer City over Bonnie Cone Leadership Academy 49-6. We talked about South Point defeating the Hunter Huss 36-22. Chesney over Blacksburg 40-13, and Bunker Hill over West Caldwell 51-16. I think we mentioned the Thursday games already. There weren't many that counted anyway. We talked about, and the game that counted Thursday was Crest over Stuart Kramer 57. If you had any other games that were played that were those extra games that don't count, because they aren't listed on Max Preps, but if you want to share some results from those extra games, feel free to do so. But that's what we got right there. So take a quick look at the RPI. I'm going to bring that up because we have a few minutes here before the show will end officially. Let's see. I'm going to try to share my screen too so we can kind of look at it together. If you don't know how to get to it, you just go to nchsaa.org and then you can just search the RPI rankings. This thing is kind of long. Oh, we got to change our classification. Okay. Well, so we'll start with 4A West, and I'm going to share my screen here once I get it up to give you an idea of where people sit as of the last update, which was this afternoon. So this is convenient. Some of you may not have seen this because you've been out at games or doing other things. So I'm going to get this on the screen here. All right, so right now in the 4A West, we've got Grimsley as the number 1 seed, Weddington 2, East Forsyth 3. So the big thing to think about here is conference champions get ranked first when you look at RPI. So any of these teams you see here, if they're not a conference champion, just know that a conference champion will be ranked before them. All right. So you just can't seed it 1 through 32 here and say these are the matchups, because there are going to be some conference champions, let's say, that are seeded above. Let's see, you got Mallard Creek at 10. We know Huff is the conference champion in the Queen City conference. Mallard Creek was second in that conference. So there may be a conference champion below Mallard Creek that gets seeded, such as Mooresville right here. So you see Mooresville is the perfect example. They're 12 in the RPI. Mallard Creek is 10, but Mooresville will be seeded before Mallard Creek because Mooresville won the Greater Metro 4A Conference. All right. So you just can't take it 1 to 32 and say these are the matchups. And I've seen some of that online, and that's not accurate. You got to put the conference champions first if you're going to try to project matchups in the first round. Okay. Chat administrator, what's up, man? He's on X. Man, I hear you, man. I can see who's on X. I can see who's on YouTube, but Facebook is not helping me tonight. So, but anyway, same situation with East Forsyth and West Forsyth. You see East Forsyth is the conference champion at 10-0. West Forsyth was second in the conference at 7-3. They're going to be conference champions that get seeded before West Forsyth because West Forsyth did not win a conference championship. Okay? So if you want to look at this weekend, if you got some downtime and play around with potential matchups, that's fine. But remember, seed all your conference champions first and then go back and seed by the RPI because that's the way it's going to be done by the state. All right? So you see these guys that are ranked pretty high. They're safely in the playoffs. We'll go down the rankings a little bit. I think everyone pretty much through 25 is safely in the playoffs, okay? And then, after that, it gets potentially a little dicey. So you're looking at guys that are on the bubble that are looking at maybe getting in, maybe not being in. You look at anyone through Porter Ridge, Marvin Ridge, South Iredale, Ragsdale, Butler, Alexander Central, Western, Guilford, A.O. Brown, and we just talked about Ardrey Kill. You see that the margin is razor thin right here for some of these guys getting in versus not being in. Butler is in a good spot because look at their opponent's winning percentage. The biggest factor in getting into the playoffs. Okay, they have a high opponent's winning percentage. Despite them being 4-6, that opponent's winning percentage is going to really help them out. And that's why, they're looking pretty good. as far as getting into the playoffs. Okay. Same thing with Marvin Ridge. Their opponent's winning percentage, it's a good percentage. Even though they had a tough season at 4-6, they got a good shot of getting into the playoffs. Okay. You'll get teams like South Iredale, not as high, even though they went 6-4. The opponent's winning percentage is not high, but at 27, I think they'll be okay. You get down to 32, 33, that's where it gets a little dicey. We mentioned RGKL specifically. The Providence win over South Meck is going to help their opponent's winning percentage. You see the margin between them and A.L. Brown's opponent winning percentage. Very close. The other factor in it, the opponent's winning percentage. Very close. They have the same record. A.L. Brown and RGKL are going to be on pins and needles on Sunday to see who gets in there. That's a razor-thin margin. And that Providence win, and even though they're rivals, and they are strong rivals, Providence might have helped RGKL get into the playoffs with their victory. The irony in that is crazy. Myers Park is another team. Good opponent's winning percentage. They're 4-6, though. That's a factor between them and Myers RGKL right there. And then the opponent's winning percentage. That's a factor, too. Not as high as RGKL or A.L. Brown. But Myers Park will be another team on pins and needles to see if they can get in one way or another. Okay. Some notable Charlotte area teams that are probably going to be out of the playoffs. You look at Chambers at 5-5. They came up on our show. When was the last time Chambers missed the playoffs? It's been a long time, man. North make it 4-6. Providence, pretty low, even though they won the night. It's probably doubtful for them to jump from 39 to get into the playoffs at 32, even with that victory. And then South Meck definitely out after the loss they had tonight. Let's jump to 3A and take a look at that and see what that might look like. So we'll go to 3A West. All right, so this was updated this afternoon as well. So first of all, the first team ranked here is North Lincoln. North Lincoln did not win their conference. Hickory won their conference. Okay, so North Lincoln, along with Crest and AC Reynolds, are all going to be seeded after conference champions. The top three teams here in 3A West did not win their conference. That's rare to see that. We just know Irwin defeated AC Reynolds tonight. Irwin's going to win their conference. South Point's going to win their conference. Hickory's going to win their conference. J.M. Robinson won their conference. Based on RPI, those four teams are going to be most likely your top four seeds. Okay, based on RPI. Then you got Dudley after that, and then you go from there. Statesville, Ashbrook did not win their conference. Okay, Oak Grove, I believe, did win their conference, so they're going to be a higher seed. So the 3A West is wide open. It's wide open because based on this, it is really interesting because I'll tell you right now, North Lincoln is a really good team. General public would probably say they are not the number one 3A team in the West. Because I will tell you, no one is talking about North Lincoln as far as going and winning a state championship potentially. Okay. You hear that talk about Crest. You hear that talk about South Point. You hear that talk about Hickory. J.M. Robinson is a contender. We know Dudley is a contender based on public opinion. Those are the names that you hear. And then down here you get to West Charlotte. West Charlotte is a contender as well. Okay. The thing about West Charlotte here, you have to take this with a grain of salt because of where they play. West Charlotte plays in a 3A, 4A combo conference full of 4A Charlotte teams. Now, their opponent's winning percentage is not that great, but you got to consider who their opponents are. On a 3A level, I think that's a level up, because if you take a look at some of those 4A teams and you put them in 3A, they may be potentially, borderline playoff teams. So, that's why a lot of people give West Charlotte some grace there as far as RPI ranking goes. Another factor, Lake Norman Charter at 8-1, they play as an independent. Okay. Lake Norman Charter, because they play as an independent, they're not eligible for the state playoffs. Now, next year, that is supposed to change because they're going to move into a conference, from my understanding. But if you're going to try to seed the playoffs, Lake Norman Charter is not a factor. Okay. And I've seen some people trying to do it, and they had Lake Norman Charter in there. It's not accurate. Okay. You got to keep them out. Now, as far as what it looks like in the bottom of 3A West, here are some teams on the borderline. Like I said, from 25 to 32, you're going to be looking at, potential in or out scenarios. Yeah, Freedom, and I believe Freedom won tonight, so that's going to really help them out. Hunter Huss, they lost tonight, but at 26, they should be okay, I believe. South Rowan at 27 should be all right. And then on down the line here, most of these teams are not in our immediate area, but North Iredale at 32. If North Iredale is able to get into the playoffs, that would be a huge win for that program. Montgomery Central is a good team at 6-4, but their opponent's winning percentage is really hurting them here. That's what's keeping them out right now. That's really low compared to North Iredale, and the opponent's winning percentage is the biggest factor. Even though they're 6-4, that's why they're below North Iredale at 4-6 right there. And then you see on down the line, West Meck most likely not going to make it. Concord not going to make it. North Gaston not going to make it. Okay, so from our area, you pretty much, I think they can breathe easily from a South Rowan, Hunter Huss standpoint. West Rowan looks pretty good at 6-4 there. East Lincoln solidly in at 7-3. And then on down the line, Northwest Cabarrus right there at 8-2. So from our area standpoint, we're looking pretty good. Okay, so right here, Freedom will be top 10 when 3A part of the conference. All right, thank you for saying that, because that's the other factor here. If you're in a split conference, a 3A, 4A conference in this case, the 4A winner of the conference will be seeded as a number 1 seed, or I should say a conference champion. The 3A portion of that conference will also be seeded as a conference champion. So what they're saying here is Freedom won the 3A part of their conference. Okay, it's the same thing like West Charlotte. West Charlotte is in a 3A, 4A conference in Charlotte. There's only 3 3A teams in that conference in Charlotte. West Charlotte, West Meck, and Harding. And West Charlotte, is the number 1 3A team in the conference. They'll get seeded as a conference champion. Now, one thing I have to check on that split conference rule is, I think, and if I'm wrong, let me know, but I think they changed it a couple years ago, because if you win the top of a split conference, you have to be overall finished in the top 3 of that conference, or you get seeded as a non-conference champion. So that's something I'll have to check. Because there were some people complaining that, in split conferences, there were people winning the conference or the split part of that conference, and they weren't high in the overall conference standing. Because, for example, there was I think there's a 2-team split conference between Parkwood and Piedmont in the I can't remember that name. There's a 3A, 4A split conference out in Union County. I can't remember the name of it, but there were some complaints about that. And then Parkwood will get into the playoffs, and you see Parkwood's at 3-7. So that's another factor right there, split conferences. So that's a good point. I appreciate you saying that. but I have to do some more research to make sure that I'm accurate on that. All right. Either way, we got playoffs coming on Sunday. There'll be a special playoff show on Sunday night. And the exact time, once again, we'll announce on social media on Sunday during the day. And I really encourage you to come and check that playoff show out, because we'll really get into the brackets. We'll talk about matchups. We'll talk about, who has the nice, potential setup to make a run in the state playoffs. And then we'll talk about, who could potentially be a title contender, and who could be someone that, could upset somebody and, make some noise, and all those fun things we get into on the playoff show. So it'll be a fun night. And then Wednesday night, Football Focus Weekly, we'll have the panel back and we'll dig into some more about those matchups. And we'll have a lot more coming forward on that, including some predictions, which are always fun around this time of season. So, all right. No more comments in the bucket. I appreciate everybody watching. A little early start tonight because we didn't have as many games. And we covered a Thursday night game. So we'll be back on Sunday night. Hope to see you guys all back with us on our special playoff show. But once again, thank you, Jay, man. Appreciate that. I hope you have a good weekend, man. Rest up for that playoff run. I'm going to have a good weekend, too. Once again, this is Friday Night Live. We are sponsored by Craig Faile of Blackbridge Financial. Well, for all your financial needs, make sure you check out Blackbridge Financial. I'm sorry about the Facebook issues. Everybody being named Facebook user, but some of you identified yourselves, so I appreciate you watching. Hopefully on the playback, when I go on Facebook, I can see who all commented and, shout you out. But appreciate you guys. Have a good weekend. And hey, Panthers in Germany, 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning. Let's see if we can get 2 in a row, man. It's going to happen. Thanks for watching.